Final Fantasy XIV is the One Piece of video games. I heard this the other day and have not been able to get it out of my head. The more I thought about it, the more I realized it had to be true. Not only that, but each Final Fantasy XIV expansion has a lot of similarities to one of the One Piece sagas. Don't worry, we'll go through each of them. Also, since the raid theme for the upcoming Evercold expansion will be themed around Neon Genesis Evangelion, I figured now would be a good time to discuss this. Also, and I know it's annoying to keep hearing this, but statistically if I don't ask you to like and subscribe, the video gets fewer subscribers. Oh, one more thing. Consider this your one and only spoiler warning for both One Piece and Final Fantasy XIV. At the time of recording, One Piece has almost 1,200 chapters of the manga, and Final Fantasy XIV takes upwards of 500 hours to catch up on the MSQ, not counting all the side quests. So there will be spoilers for events that you may not even arrive at for weeks, if not months, if you decide to play or watch either of these epic stories. Also, I'm sure lots of you are like, but Danon, One Piece is so long. I could never read it. To which I only have this to say.
That's why no one will remember your name.
After the disastrous launch of Final Fantasy XIV, Square Enix scrambled to bring in Naoki Yoshida, affectionately known as Yoshi P, to fix the game. While his team did bug fixes and added some functionality to version 1.0 of the game, they were also working on 2.0, a complete reset of the world. Basically, the world got hit by a giant meteor that turned out to be a moon-sized prison for Bahamut. The destruction wrought by this primal dragon can still be seen today, years later, and it also gives us one of the most epic cutscenes in video game history. But after the world was reset, a new story emerged. In A Realm Reborn, you are the Warrior of Light, an adventurer who goes about helping people in the countryside. Yes, you get loot from dungeons, and you get paid in gil for completing quests. But you're still out slaying monsters, saving princesses, and killing gods. No, seriously, you fight your first god at like level 20. Now, purists will say that Ifrit isn't a god, he's a primal. To which I ask, what is the difference? No, seriously. At least in the eyes of the Amalja, what is the difference between Ifrit and Thal? Oh, that's right. Ifrit actually answers when called. To get back to the main point, A Realm Reborn is mostly about exploration and setting the scene. We travel around learning about new areas, uncovering problems, and solving them in a rather quick pace. We go from being just another adventurer to someone that the Lords of the Realm rely upon to solve problems. Along that path, we gather companions. At first, we only meet one or two who show up to help us with our adventures, but eventually Y'shtola, Thancred, Ida, Papalimo, Oriange, and Minfilia all become staunch allies who help us on our path to becoming the Warrior of Light and stand against the forces of darkness who would see the world destroyed. And then the Garlean Empire shows up and wants us to surrender. After all, they've got a weapon that no one can defeat. It easily devours gods and becomes even more powerful. So of course, it's up to you and your stalwart companions, as well as the smart-mouth know-it-all kid Alphino. Don't worry, he does grow a lot over the next few expansions. To convince the leaders of the Eorzean Alliance to fight back against the Empire and win freedom for all. We launch a coordinated counterattack, destroying key Garlean elements, and eventually come face-to-face with the Legatus and leader of the 14th Imperial Legion, Gaius Van Belsar. But even though he gets defeated, the Empire still exists, and they are a force to be reckoned with. After all, it took the combined might of the 3 city-states of Eorzea to defeat just one of the Empire's legions. What will happen when the entire Empire is brought against Eorzea? The One Piece saga that is most like A Realm Reborn is the East Blue saga. I know that some of you are nodding along in agreement, thinking that this is the only option, but some of you don't know what either of those are. Allow me to explain. The East Blue Saga is the first saga of One Piece. Luffy gets the going merry and recruits Nami, Usopp, Mosshead, and Eyebrow. Sorry, I meant Zoro and Sanji. So, just like the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, Luffy forms the Straw Hat Pirates, a group of people on a quest together, but who also have their own individual goals. Nami wants to map the world, Usopp wants to become a man of the sea. Sanji wants to find the all blue. Zoro wants to be the strongest swordsman in the world. And Luffy wants to be king of the pirates. Not to rule over them, of course, but to be the freest man on the ocean. When Gold Roger sailed the seas, no one could stop him. And that sense of freedom travels with the crew in island after island. Whether they're fighting against Marines or fellow pirates, they are always taking out oppressors and conquerors. They don't simply go around beating people up for no reason, though. Someone has to ask for help. Someone who is being oppressed. Zoro needed Luffy to get his swords. Usopp needed help to save his village from pirates trying to hurt his childhood friend. Sanji needed help saving the restaurant. And finally, Nami needed help saving her village. Now, in 2 of these, pirates were the villains. In the other 2, Marines were the villains. Yes, I'm only focusing on arcs where a new member of the crew was introduced. I love Kobe and Buggy, but they're not as important to the East Blue arc, the overall plot of One Piece, nor are they scions of the Seventh Dawn. I mean, Straw Hat Pirates. The point is that even though Luffy wanted to become the king of the pirates, he is willing to help those who ask for it. He's not a freedom fighter like his father, setting up revolutions to overthrow corrupt governments. He's honestly a lot more like his grandfather, taking the fight to the bad guys while ignoring stuff that is technically illegal but not really harmful to anyone. But what about what happens after A Realm Reborn? Not Heaven's Word proper, but the patch content. What about what happens after Arlong Park? Well, those are quite similar as well, though less happy times for our Warrior of Light. A big part of the post-ARR patch content is dedicated to building up a new organization, one that will help protect the realm but not be tied to any specific city-state, which, of course, is corrupted before it even begins. The big cutscene at the end of A Realm Reborn shows the Sultana being poisoned, the Scions being broken up and forced to flee, and us, the Warrior of Light, escaping to the frozen reach of Korthus. And while the Logetown arc doesn't end as badly as Final Fantasy XIV does, we do have some pretty tense moments. Buggy almost cuts off Luffy's head, and Luffy, in the act of escaping, gets captured by Smoker. If it weren't for Luffy's father showing up to save him, our series would have been over very quickly. Heaven's Word. After escaping Eorzea and heading to Kurthus, the Warrior of Light is drawn into an ancient conflict between the noble holy warriors of Ishgard and Dravanya, a draconic menace that has threatened Ishgard for 1,000 years. Every family in Ishgard has had someone killed by a dragon. None have been spared. Hatred runs deep, and the only end for the war that anyone can see is the total annihilation of the other side. But not all is what it seems. The Holy Knights are keeping a secret. Though they claim they were fighting against the monsters who were trying to destroy them, nobly saving the lives of citizens of Ishgard from the terrible dragons who would kill us all, that is a lie. As it turns out, humans and dragons used to live in peace with each other. One day, King Thordan, the ruler of Ishgard, along with his knights, betrayed the dragons, killed Nidhogg's mate, then tore Nidhogg's eyes from his head. Dragons' eyes are the source of their power, and since Nidhogg was one of the 7 great worms of the Dravanian horde, each eye contained far more power than can be handled by most mortals, and handling both of them was beyond the capability of any mortal. But the defeat of Nidhogg wasn't without price. King Thordan, along with many of his knights, was killed in the conflict, and the fight also started the Dragon Song War. Ishgardians living today have all been told that the dragons are here to destroy them, and that they need to fight against the raging beasts. But dragons, especially those who are still alive after 1,000 years, don't need stories passed down for generations. They don't need to read the histories in their holy temples. They can simply remember. For mortals, it was 1,000 years ago. For dragons, it was yesterday. The righteous anger they feel due to the betrayal is not only justified, but also just as fresh today as it was 1,000 years ago. The only way to bring an end to that insanity? Remove the warmongers from power. The 2 powers that be who perpetrate this war, Nidhogg himself and the Archbishop of the Ishgardian faith. Will the Warrior of Light be able to prevail against the leaders of not 1, but 2 nations? Dressrosa is a happy place full of happy people and happy toys. There are living toys who walk around, play with children, and generally make every day easier. No one ever goes missing. What happened to my father? I don't know what you're talking about. I've never had a father. Of course, we all know that Dressrosa is run by the former warlord Don Quixote Doflamingo. Doflamingo knows the Straw Hats are coming, though, so he sets a trap. Several traps, in fact. The biggest one catches Luffy. The Flame fruit, the devil fruit his late brother ate, is the latest prize at the Colosseum. There's only one fruit, so there can only be one winner. Luffy disguises himself and enters the competition. Meanwhile, the mature members of the Straw Hats, Robin and Usopp, well, okay, just Robin, along with Law, go off to Greenbit to trade Caesar to Doflamingo. Additionally, Nami, Chopper, Brook, and Momonosuke, not a member of the Straw Hat Pirates but traveling with them at the moment, stay behind to watch over the Thousand Sunny. They'd planned to travel to Zoe, where the rest of Law's crew was waiting for him, but plans have a way of changing for the Straw Hats. Of course, not all is as it seems in the happy country of Dressrosa. Eventually, the Straw Hats learn that one of the members of Doflamingo's crew ate a fruit that allows her to turn people into toys. All the toys wandering around the island were once human beings. But no one remembers them, so the toys cannot tell anyone about what happened. Besides, even if they could, why would they believe a toy? The linchpin of Doflamingo's rule over Dressrosa was Sugar, the devil fruit user who transformed all the people into toys. The drawback of the Hobby fruit is that the transformation only lasts so long as the user is awake. So when Usopp manages to knock her unconscious, and all the people she's transformed for the last several years suddenly revert, the horror of what Doflamingo has done to the kingdom of Dressrosa is revealed. Just like how the death of Nidhogg revealed the corruption of the church, which led to the archbishop and his knights fleeing Ishgard. They knew their entire power base was built on a lie and refused to let anyone take power from them. And Doflamingo, realizing there was no way for him to recover control of Dressrosa, decided to destroy the entire kingdom, rather than let it be saved. After the Dragonsong War comes to an end, we spend some time gathering up the missing scions. In the process of saving some and tracking down others, we discover that Ilberd has set in motion his plans to force Eorzea to free Ala Mhigo, which sets up the Stormblood expansion. We go to war with the Empire. After getting wrecked by Xenos and the progress we've made in Ala Mhigo pushed back, we shift our strategy. We start a war on two fronts, trying to divide the Empire's attention. We travel to the Far East, to the Ruby Sea, where we help ferment a rebellion in Doma. Eventually, after raising armies, making fun of little sons, and lots of fighting, we're able to defeat Xenos and free both Doma and Ala Mhigo. And once peace has been brought to the land, there's nothing more to worry about, right? Right? Finally arriving in the Grand Line, after leaving Laboo and promising to return, the Straw Hat Pirates are invited to a party at Whiskey Peak, which quickly turns into a massacre. It turns out the friendly people they met are from Baroque Works. We meet Miss Wednesday as well as Miss All Sunday, both of whom start as villains, but one is undercover and the other eventually joins the Straw Hats. As it turns out, Baroque Works is a criminal organization run by Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords. It has been working in secret to overthrow the government of Arabasta. And by the time the Straw Hats eventually make it there with Miss Wednesday, who's actually Vivi Nefertari, the princess of the kingdom, a civil war has broken out for control of the kingdom. Eventually, the Straw Hats are able to stop the leaders and bring peace to the land, but only after Vivi asks Luffy for help. Stormblood and the Arabasta arc are almost complete opposites. In the case of Final Fantasy XIV, we're fermenting rebellion to overthrow the yoke of the invaders who conquered these two countries and have been ruling with an iron fist. Meanwhile, in One Piece, a rebellion has been created in order to establish a dictator who will rule the kingdom with an iron fist. On top of that, Luffy gets his butt handed to him by Crocodile the first time they fight. It is the first time Luffy loses on screen. We've never seen Luffy defeated. We've seen him struggle a few times, but never lose. And the Warrior of Light also loses to Xenos the first time we encounter him. We have to go stronger so that we can defeat him. And Shonen Battle Series, like RPGs, both have mechanics that help you become stronger. As the third expansion, we've pretty well established that, as the Warrior of Light, our job is to fight against the darkness. Specifically, Ascians. Their goal is to free their god, and the only way to do so is to destroy the 13 reflections of the Source and return the split Aether. This will empower Zodiark and weaken Hydaelyn. Our goal is to keep Zodiark imprisoned. We're not exactly sure what will happen if he's ever freed, but since the Ascians want it to happen, we want to prevent it. What makes Shadowbringers interesting is that the whole light versus dark debate gets flipped on its head. What if light was destroying the world? What if a flood of light wiped out almost all the landmass, as well as life, on the planet? What if no one had seen the night sky for a century? What if you had to set aside your title as the Warrior of Light, and instead became the Warrior of Darkness? Which is exactly what happens. As the Warrior of Darkness, our job is to beat back the light and return night to the world. Stars can be seen in the night sky. Instead of a constant wavering white, the sky returns to being black. Night follows day once more, as was spoken of in the ancient legends. But Emmett Selk, the leader of the Ascians, does not agree with us. He wants us to understand that our lives are meaningless. Nothing we can do can stop him. His plans will always come to fruition. Emmett Selk will not be stopped by mere mortals. And to be fair, he's almost right. We almost lost. But we pull together and defeat him. We prove that we are right through our strength of arms and strength of conviction. But the fight isn't over. Another Ascian, almost as strong but better suited to a world still flooded with light, stands against us. Elidibus has been convincing heroes to join up and fight against the darkness for millennia. In fact, he also defeated us. But then we're saved by the whims of someone who used to be our enemy. We rally together and take down the last of the ancient Ascians. Well, almost the last. As Yoda says,
There is another.
But the emotional impact of the series starts with even the pre-patch content. Our friends, the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, start dropping like flies. Their bodies are still alive, but their souls have been ripped from their bodies. We're forced to watch, helplessly, as our friends and allies drop. Almost like our crew is shrinking before our eyes. Shadowbringers is by far the most emotionally raw expansion, so it makes sense that Water 7 is the arc it most resembles. Rather than a world covered by light, the Straw Hats arrive at an island where the water runs uphill. Sometimes. A city covers the entire island, a train runs on the surface of the sea, and Nami is finally able to sell the gold they acquired. What? They are pirates, after all. But before they get a chance to spend it on a new ship, Usopp is robbed, and 2/3 of their money is taken. After that, Usopp fights with Luffy and leaves the Straw Hats. And to make matters worse, Robin is taken into custody by the government. They've wanted her for a long time, and now it seems she's willingly turning herself over. Luffy practically gives up. His ship is gone. His friends are leaving him. How is he supposed to be king of the pirates if he can't even protect his crew, much less keep them together? Nami discovers the truth. Robin sacrificed herself to save the crew. Luffy is enraged. How dare she make that decision on her own? So they all run off to save Robin from the government. Up until this point, the Straw Hats had fought local island leaders, other pirates, criminals, and the occasional corrupt marine commander. But the world government is a whole different beast. It runs the entire world. It represents the will of 170 nations. And Luffy's response is to set its flag on fire. Well, he orders Soge King to do so, but it means the same thing. Do you know what that means? How can one small crew take on the entire world? Bring it on. Robin, tell me you want to live. Which is what the Warrior of Light has been saying to the Ascians since the beginning of the game. The world was torn asunder by Hydaelyn in an attempt to seal away Zodiark, split into 14 shards, the Source, and the 13 reflections. Every time a calamity happened, it was one of the reflections being destroyed, and the aether from that world flowing back into the Source. But the deaths of these people don't bother the Ascians like Emmett Selk. After all, humanity is just a reflection, a weak shadow of what it was supposed to be. If only humans could be whole again, then they'd see. They just need everyone to understand that one truth. On the flip side, the world government knows that Robin is able to expose the truth in its entirety. She can read poneglyphs. The ancient writing was supposed to be removed entirely, but those traitors on O'Hara with their damn books and their insatiable curiosity doomed themselves by asking too many questions. Water 7 wraps up with the single most heartbreaking scene in One Piece, the death of the Going Merry. We knew she didn't have long. Her back was broken. But her spirit lived on, and she made one more journey to save her crew. And then she died. She got to say goodbye, though, which is all you can ask for. Speaking of goodbyes, Emmett Selk also got to say goodbye after we killed him. And he asked that we remember that they, the Ascians, once lived. Talk about a traumatic ending. Speaking of trauma, after saving the world again, well, 2 worlds, the Warrior of Light returns to Eorzea, ready to continue the fight with the Garlean Empire. Only, the Empire has had a civil war. Xenos, somehow returned from the dead, has killed his father and destroyed Garlia from the inside. The monster never wanted to rule after all, he just wanted to fight. But a prophecy was heard about the end times, and Charlia seems to know something. Also, what are these strange towers that seem to have appeared all over the world? What is their purpose? And why do they seem to warp people's aether the same way primals do? Eventually, the final gambit of the Ascians is revealed. They intend to free Zodiark. Before Xenos can merge with the Dark God, Fandaniel does so. We defeat him, and all is right with the world, right? Right? The reason Zodiark was summoned in the first place was to save the world from the end times. Magic had gone wild, and the world was on the brink of ruin. That same ruin now gripped the world. Only instead of magic going wild, people were becoming monsters. Hideous, demonic things that would gleefully destroy their former friends and family. All it took was a little despair and the transformation would take hold. But what was causing this? How can we fight against something like the end of days? By finding out how this came to be. The Warrior of Light travels back in time to Elpis, the world unsundered. There we meet with Emmett Selk as he was before he summoned Zodiark. We also meet with Venat, the woman who would one day summon and become Hydaelyn. And we discover what happened. We know that despair from an untold legion of world travelers caused the Endsinger to come into existence. And to stop her, we must travel to a world that is not at the edge of the universe to stop her from ending all of creation. Endwalker marks the end of the Zodiark versus Hydaelyn arc. This arc was 10 years in the making. Every moment of Endwalker feels epic, and the conclusion is both fitting and satisfying. Also known as the War of the Best, the Summit War marks the conclusion of the first half of One Piece. Everything that has happened so far has led to this point. Ace was captured by Blackbeard so that the world government would make him a warlord. He then used his warlord powers to break into Impel Down and recruit some of the nastiest pirates and criminals in the world in order to become an Emperor of the Sea. Of course, Luffy does everything he can to save Ace, including breaking into Impel Down and freeing a bunch of prisoners. They wind up at Marineford just after Whitebeard shows up. with every single pirate crew in his alliance. The full military might of an emperor against the combined might of the Marines. And it is an even fight. Whitebeard, using the quake fruit, causes an earthquake, which creates a giant tsunami. If that tsunami isn't stopped, the entirety of Marineford will be wiped off the map. So Kuzan freezes the water solid. This is exactly what Whitebeard wanted. With the seas frozen, his armada can disembark and charge the island from all directions. This is just the opening salvo of this war. I won't go through all the details because the war itself lasts 31 chapters. A lot happens during those fights, and there is a lot of death. At the end of the Marineford War, an emperor is dead, Luffy's brother is dead, but the Marines aren't sure they won that fight. After Luffy wakes up from surgery, he was injured in the attack that killed Ace, as well as having his body overwhelmed by the chemicals Ivankov injected into him. Luffy is reminded that even though his brother is dead, he still has his crew. He also comes to the realization that the Straw Hats, as they are now, cannot hope to survive the Grand Line. The Whitebeard pirates were an even match for the Marines, while Luffy, the strongest member of the Straw Hats, couldn't even stand toe-to-toe with an admiral. He struggled against vice admirals. Well, we all know Garp threw that fight. But compare that to the power of Whitebeard. Whitebeard took down Sakazuki with a single punch. He hit him so hard the earth opened up to swallow him. If Whitebeard hadn't been interrupted by Teach, Sakazuki would probably be dead. Now, neither Final Fantasy XIV nor One Piece have come to an end. Both series are still ongoing. But the Summit War and Endwalker both mark the end of an era. The Straw Hats are no longer rookies, while Endwalker marks the end of a world with gods. No more Hydaelyn, no more Zodiark. Even the 12 have been defeated at our hands, their Aether returning to the world, allowing it to heal. This is why the newest expansion marks the beginning of the Godless Realms saga. After saving the world, the Warrior of Light takes a vacation in far-off Tyrol. There we help a young and naive girl become a woman and a worthy ruler of the land. But that's only half the story. After Wook Lamont becomes the next Dawn Servant, along with her adopted brother, two heads are better than one, as their father proved, we journey north to Yaktel. While exploring this new land, a dome made of lightning suddenly appears, and strange troops come pouring out of it. They attack the capital city of Tuliolal, killing indiscriminately. But the soldiers aren't human. They bleed no blood when they're put down. And the former Dawn Servant himself is cut down by his own son. A son who's equipped with a strange tech that seems to grant him immense powers. He also seems a lot older than he was before. As it turns out, the Golden City, the final destination for the quest to find the next Dawn Servant, is actually part of another world. A reflection. Something that we, as the Warrior of Light, as well as the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, are intimately familiar with. So we investigate this strange dome and how it is a piece of another planet, and how 20 years seem to have passed in less than a week. Remember, Alisaie was unconscious for a couple of weeks before we traveled to Norvrant, and it turns out she was there for years. Time moves differently between the reflections. But that's not the only strange thing that is happening. Lightning infuses everything, and the people struggle to survive. Except that some don't seem to struggle at all. Life seems good for those at the top. But what can be done to help those still struggling? And what is keeping these people alive? Skypiea, or the Sky Island Saga, is one of the most hotly debated arcs in One Piece. Personally, I love this arc because of the narrative storytelling. Not to mention, Enel is one of the best villains in any One Piece saga. I've actually thought about doing a video on how much I love this arc, but I haven't had the time. Maybe in the future. Anyway, where was I? I'd like to start out with how much I love the narrative arc and how the conclusion convinced me that Oda is one of the all-time great writers. The conclusion of the arc is when Luffy rings the bell. The ringing of the bell wraps up 3 separate storylines, all at the same time. Think about that for a second. A bell is rung and a prophecy is fulfilled. A bell is rung and a promise is concluded. A bell is rung and a god is taken down. Let me explain. We all know that Enel isn't actually a god, but he did eat a logia fruit, specifically the lightning fruit, allowing him to become, create, and control electricity. At this time, no one in the Straw Hats can use hockey of any form, much less armament hockey. So how are they able to defeat someone whose body can transform into lightning? Luffy was able to defeat Crocodile with water and, when push came to shove, blood. Liquid hardened the sand, allowing Luffy's punches to inflict damage on Crocodile. But what stops lightning? You'd need an insulating material, something the lightning wouldn't affect. If only there was something made out of rubber. That's right, Enel is basically powerless against Luffy. But he does have home turf advantage. And observation hockey, so he's always one step ahead. Saying Enel is smarter than Luffy is like saying the sun is hot. Enel isn't just smarter than Luffy, everyone is smarter than Luffy. But the ringing of the bell, that final punch that Luffy throws against this self-styled god, defeating him and knocking him out, isn't just the conclusion of a fight. Long ago, Mont Black Noland found a city made of gold. He made friends with the natives, went home and told everyone about it, and then when he returned, the island was gone. He was then executed for lying, and children still tell tales about Noland the liar. But his descendant, Cricket, believes his ancestor. He thinks the City of Gold was real. They just don't know where it is. Cricket's been diving off the coast of Jaya and has found some evidence of the City of Gold, but he has no idea what really happened. A knock-up stream, basically a massively powerful geyser, blew half the island into the sky, where it landed atop Skypiea. Now, soil was the most valuable item in the sky because it was both rare and useful. The ability to grow food is something necessary for humanity, so the natives of Jaya and the Skypieans fought over it. But part of the legend of Nolan was that when he returned to the island, the people would ring the giant golden bell, letting him know that they had seen him and that he was their friend. Anyway, there was also a long-time prophecy about the bell, stating when the bell was rung and the Holy Wind sings again, that peace will come to Skypiea. And with the ringing of that bell, a prophecy is fulfilled, a promise is kept, and a god is cast down, all at the same time. Now, for years, people said that Skypiea wasn't that important. And with the exception of introducing observation hockey to the series, they were correct. Sure, the poneglyph with Roger's signature carved next to it was a fun bit of world building, but it wasn't until chapter 1044 of One Piece where we find out that Luffy's fruit isn't just the Rubberman fruit, but actually the Hito no Mi mythical types model sun god Nika, just how much foreshadowing was in the arc. The fact that Luffy wasn't a god of freedom, joy, and revolution, should have been obvious. After all, it takes a god to defeat another god, which is what happened when Luffy beat the tar out of Enel. The reason I think these two are similar is that as they aired, and even for a few years later, they weren't that popular. They certainly weren't as beloved as the arcs that came before or after. Alabasta is top tier, as is Water 7. Both of these sagas are some of the best in One Piece. But years later, we find out that Skypiea is just as important. And I get the feeling that the same thing will happen with Dawn Trail. Eventually. But it may take a few years to get to that point. The newest expansion, just recently announced, won't be out until January of 2027. So if you're watching this video in the future, know that we just had 7.5 come out. We know who the Winterers are, and we know what their plan is, but we're not sure how to stop it or what our plan's going to be. We also know that the world is frozen in ice and people have gone to the sky to survive. And there are giants wandering around. What does that remind you of? From one unfinished series to another. Obviously, Elbaf is still ongoing, and we don't know what will happen next. Which is the fun part about an ongoing series. But we're finally on the Island of Giants, and there's snow everywhere, right? We'll have to wait and see what happens next year. My guess is that a year from now, we'll be mostly done with Elbaf, and we'll know what Evercold brings us. I hope you had as much fun watching this video as I had making it. Once again, a huge shout out to my editor Cute Stuff. I couldn't make these videos without her. If you'd like to hire her to edit your own videos, she can be reached at cutestuff.edits@gmail.com. Link is down below. If you're looking for ways to support the channel directly, you can head on over to patreon.com/Danon. There are several tiers to choose from. You can pick an anime or manga for me to do a video about, or you can join our monthly manga club. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons: Waffles, Marcus, Brett, Roxy, Alix, Robert, Pi, Kazaris, Patrick, Boomy, Osira, Justin, Golden Walker, Sleech, Mr. Salty, Daniel Zombie, Luke, Brian, Richard, Jeffin, and Enra. You guys are awesome. I post anime or manga videos often, or you can click here to watch additional videos. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again next time on Commander by Danon.